Hello, you join us here on London Live for a special programme as the nation gathers in mourning after the announcement that Britain's longest reigning monarch, Queen Elizabeth II, has died. King Charles III is currently addressing the nation here in the capital after travelling back from Balmoral Castle in Scotland. He will be officially proclaimed as king at the Ascension Council tomorrow morning. We'll be bringing you that address from King Charles III momentarily, but first let's look back at the capital's tributes to the Queen this afternoon. At midday here in London, bells tolled at Westminster Abbey and St Paul's Cathedral in memory of the late Queen Elizabeth II. They joined tens of thousands of churches across the UK who also sounded their bells at the same time, including Windsor Castle, Glasgow Cathedral and Crathy Kirk near the Balmoral estate in Scotland, where the Queen passed away. Well, an hour after the bells finished ringing in London, 96 rounds of gun salutes, one for every year of the Queen's life, were fired in tribute to the late monarch. These salutes took place in Hyde Park by the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery and at the Tower of London by the Honourable Artillery Company. A procession of 71 horses cantered into Hyde Park ahead of the gun salute, 36 of them pulling First World War-era 13-pounder field guns. Police officers could be seen clearing the pathways as the military entourage rode through the southeastern corner of the park, and thousands of people lined the pavement in the same corner to watch. While other salutes took place, including at Edinburgh Castle, Stirling Castle and Dover Castle. The country will remain in a state of mourning until the Queen's funeral, which is expected to be on Monday the 19th of September. The royal family will remain in mourning until 7 days after the funeral. Well, at the same time as the church bells rang out, MPs in the House of Commons observed a minute's silence in memory of the Queen as they stood in the crowded chamber with heads bowed. Well, Commons Speaker Sir Lindsay Hoyle led the tributes, telling MPs she is wed in our minds with the Crown and all it stands for.
Almost all of us in the House have experienced no other monarch, this country's throne, but Her late Majesty. There are indeed only a score or so members in this House who have already been born, let alone who can recall a time when she wasn't the Queen. She is wedded in our minds with the Crown and all it stands for.
Well, next to speak in the House of Commons was, of course, new Prime Minister Liz Truss, who met with the Queen only 3 days ago at Balmoral, where she was officially asked to form a government after the resignation of Boris Johnson. Well, there were concerns about the mobility of the Queen at this point, as the audience with a new Prime Minister is usually held at Buckingham Palace. But it was clear the Queen was determined to still carry out one of her most significant constitutional duties. Well, Liz Truss, addressing MPs in the Commons for tributes to the Queen, said we have witnessed the most heartfelt outpouring of grief.
Her late Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II, was one of the greatest leaders the world has ever known. She was the rock on which modern Britain was built. We remember the pledge she made on her 21st birthday to dedicate her life to service. The whole House will agree. Never has a promise been so completely fulfilled. Her devotion to duty remains an example to us all. The Crown endures. Our nation endures. And in that spirit, I say, God save the King.
There we are, that's our new Prime Minister, Liz Truss there. Well, former Prime Ministers Boris Johnson and Theresa May could both be seen on the backbenches listening to their successors' tribute. But both also got a chance to speak, with Boris Johnson issuing what he billed as a personal confession to the House of Commons, describing being moved to tears when asked several months ago to take part in a BBC interview discussing the Queen in the past tense. Well, Mr Johnson also went to see the Queen at Balmoral to resign just 3 days ago.
The cameras started rolling and they requested that I should talk about her in the past tense. And I'm afraid I simply choked up and I couldn't go on. I'm really not easily moved to tears, but I was so overcome with sadness that I had to ask them to go away.
Our former PM Boris Johnson there. Well, the leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, also gave his tribute, addressing the deep and private loss for the royal family, but also acknowledging that the Queen had a special and personal relationship with the general public too.
Our Queen's commitment to us, her life of public service, was underpinned by one crucial understanding: that the country she came to symbolise is bigger than any one individual or any one institution. It is the sum total of all our history and all our endeavours, and it will endure. The late Queen would have wanted us to redouble our efforts, to turn our collar up and face the storm, to carry on. Most of all, she would want us to remember that it is in these moments that we must pull together.
Well, other significant voices included Conservative former Prime Minister Theresa May, who reduced the House of Commons to laughter with a story about the Queen and some dropped cheese. Well, tributes from MPs in a packed Houses of Parliament today are expected to continue into the evening and on Saturday. Well, let's just take a look at some of the impacts of the Queen's death on day-to-day life here in the capital and beyond. Some of the biggest looming strike actions have been called off since the news of her passing. Unions representing Royal Mail postal workers and rail staff say that out of respect to her service to the country and her family, they had chosen to cancel immediate strike action. Walkouts by postal workers on Friday the 9th of September and RMT rail worker strike action on the 15th and 17th of September is suspended, while the train drivers' union ASLEF also postponed its walkout planned for the 15th of September. All sports fixtures in the coming days will also be postponed as a mark of respect, including the England cricket's Test match, which will resume on Saturday, and all Premier League fixtures this weekend. Well, yesterday evening, the Mercury Music Prize ceremony was called off, and the traditional finale of the prom season, known, of course, as the last night of the proms, which was due to take place on Saturday at the Royal Albert Hall, has also been cancelled by organisers. Well, Downing Street today confirmed that there is no obligation to postpone events or sporting fixtures during the mourning period for the Queen's death, but it is instead at the discretion of individual organisations. Well, as we mentioned, King Charles returned to the capital today, and these were the scenes as he arrived at the front of Buckingham Palace, greeted by the Sun as he came face-to-face with the general public, speaking with them as many shared their condolences and best wishes before the new King and Queen Consort took in the scene of the flowers and messages laid at the gates and entered the palace. Well, we'll hear what our new king said in his public address after the break. But for now, you're watching a special London Live news show. After the break, we'll be hearing from the public at Buckingham Palace about what the Queen meant to them.
Just want to read it for me.
Grief is the price we pay for love.
The Queen's strength and stay, the Duke of Edinburgh, was by her side for 73 years. Queen Elizabeth first met him in 1934 at his cousin's wedding, but their first significant meeting was while Philip was a naval cadet in 1939. During the war, she kept a photograph of him and they wrote regularly to each other, with Philip calling her by her nickname Lilibet. They married in 1947 in front of 2,000 guests at Westminster Abbey. The Duke was later forced to give up his naval career and concentrate on his royal duties when Elizabeth became the Queen. They had 4 children: Charles, Anne, Edward and Andrew. On their golden wedding anniversary in 1997, the Queen said Philip, quite simply, had been her strength and stay all these years.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Hello, you're watching a special programme from London Live as the country enters a period of national mourning after Queen Elizabeth II has died. Well, joining me now is Tanya Francis, who travelled to Buckingham Palace today to get a sense of the feeling in the capital and indeed the country. Tanya, just give us a sense of what it was like at the palace.
Helena, in many ways, what an incredible day. It's been incredibly sad, but also the amount of love that I've seen in the capital today is really something to note. As you mentioned, there was outside Buckingham Palace, along with thousands of other people who had turned up to pay tribute to the Queen. And what really stood out to me there was how much admiration so many people had for her and the amount of joy that they brought, that she had brought to their lives. And the entire area in front of the palace gates was just flooded with thousands of people, and it was at a time where the weather really wasn't on our sides, but it didn't stop people coming out in the thousands, many carrying candles and beautiful bouquets and letters, all hoping that they could get close to the gates to leave their messages there. Just a couple that I read, really heartwarming. Jenny and Sylvia saying, "You were my grandmother's idol, and we are here today because you gave us so much." Another saying, "Thank you for inspiring so many generations." And that's also something that I noticed today, is that the love and the grief was felt by people of all ages. We had, tiny children there putting bouquets down, and then, also people very, very old, struggling to walk, but still wanting to just be there and sort of pay their respects. And not only throughout the generations, but globally, as I walked through the crowds, you just heard languages from countries all around the world, people just taking this moment to celebrate the Queen. Now, I spoke to a couple of those people who had some lovely messages from themselves, but also from their relatives, and beautiful flowers to lay outside the palace.
I was born nearly 40 years ago, so like everybody pretty much for 70 years old, the Queen has been a constant in our lives. So the Queen has also been woven into the daily fabric of our lives with our money, our currency, our stamps. We always see her everywhere. She's a British icon. So it's very difficult to sort of imagine British life without our Queen of England. So just from a lover of the royals and a lover of the Queen and what she's done for us.
And how are you feeling about now having a king? We'll soon have Charles as our leader.
I think Charles has been well groomed. He's been primed for the role for 70 years, so I think he'll do great with his Queen consort. It's going to be very jarring to adjust to having a King of England now, when we've been so used to saying Her Majesty the Queen and seeing the Queen's image on everything around us. So it's going to be very jarring to make that transformation from a female leader to now a male leader. But of course, life goes on, and we have to adjust to the change and keep the Queen in our hearts.
I think we all knew the day was going to come, but it was quite a shock. I think I was glad she got to the Platinum Jubilee. I think that's what she wanted, and I think now she's at times she's like, I'm done, I'm putting my feet up, I'm going for a rest.
She means a lot to me because her and I share the same birthday, the 21st of April, and I left my heart with her heart over there as a way of thank you.
Some tributes there from members of the public. Well, what was the feeling among the crowd? You mentioned thousands of people there.
What was incredible was there were thousands there, but there was this sense of peace and the crowd was very quiet, and it was really calm, and it was actually, a real sense of respect. I think a lot of times when we can have that many number of people in one space very quickly, it often doesn't feel very calm, and it really was there. And some people very much taking a moment for themselves to say goodbye, and then others clearly incredibly overwhelmed and overcome with grief by the news that we got yesterday. Lots of messages that I read that were attached to the bouquets spoke of how many saw the Queen as their own mother and had this sort of family connection to her. And so the news that we all received yesterday really, really hit home hard.
And I was watching things on TV this morning, and I was thinking, it just brings back so many memories. And she's been here, she's like my mother, really. I know, it's terrible.
The Queen has been protecting our country for centuries, and we loved her for protecting our lives and countries. And my families are feeling emotional because she died after like a lot of years, and the next king or queen should fill the shoes of the queen.
And just tell me who you're here with today.
I'm with my uncle, my grandma, my mum, and me.
Your grandmother, whereabouts is your grandmother from?
Ecuador, South America.
And you all live here together as a family, do you?
Yes.
Yo no me siento bien, yo me siento mal, porque
I don't feel well. I feel bad because in my heart I loved her very much. Because of the Queen, she helped us so much, and that's why we're here. We're here in this country. We've lost the Queen, but we do good things. We don't do bad things because we have peace. Me and my family are here and we bring peace, and I love it here and I love the cold.
nada que hablar de aquí del país, a mí me gusta aquí, incluso me gusta el frío.
Thank you, just thank you, Flora. Just thank you. And I hope she rests in the peace, you know.
Now we saw there just quite how difficult some of the people that were there were finding today. And just to give you a sense of how busy it was, there were queues of people going all the way up Grosvenor Place and down Constitution Hill, queuing with bouquets of flowers to get right in front of the palace gates, which had been cordoned off, and that was where thousands of bouquets had been left. And a couple of people, understandably, didn't want to wait in the rain and didn't want to wait what looked like a couple of hours in order to get into that area so that they could hook their flowers onto the palace gate. So we helped one family that had originally come from New Zealand to make sure that their bouquet got as close to the gates as possible.
Sorrowed by the Queen having passed last night, here with my family, and we've all come down to pay our respects. She's done an incredible job throughout her whole life, dedicating her life to the Crown, and we're all just here to pay our respects to Her Majesty the Queen.
Have you travelled far today to come down to Buckingham Palace?
We are from New Zealand, but we live about a 15-minute walk away. And yeah, we're amazed by how many people have travelled so far away to come and pay their respects. Yeah.
Now, there are incredibly huge queues to get onto the other side of the barrier, right in front of the gate. And many people are not able to come across. Would you like us to take the flowers for you so that we can...
Would love you to. That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
What message, would you want to go with the flowers for the Queen? I don't know if you've got a card on there or just something that you'd like to sort of say to her on behalf of you and your family.
We'd just like to say thank you so much for dedicating your life to such a, beautiful, country and the people in it. She is, a great role model to me and so many others. And yeah, I would just like to say thank you, and that would be amazing.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Only here in London that we've been seeing things like that. It's up and down the country. People are leaving flowers and lighting candles, most notably outside Balmoral Castle, but also Windsor Castle. And just looking at the news internationally, how she's being remembered globally, it really is a very special day.
Absolutely. Well, Tanya Francis, thank you so much. Tanya there with a roundup of the public sentiment outside Buckingham Palace and beyond. You're watching a special London Live news show. More to follow as the nation mourns the death of our longest reigning monarch.
And where did you come? I know what you want.
The Queen was devoted to her corgis. Her first, Susan, was given to her as an 18th birthday present by her parents in 1944. Susan became the founder of the Queen's Royal Dog Dynasty, but she was not always well behaved, known for being rather partial to going for servants' legs. During her reign, the Queen owned more than 30 corgis, with many of them direct descendants from Susan, who was so loved that she accompanied Princess Elizabeth on her honeymoon. In April 2018, the Queen was left devastated when Willow, her final corgi descended from Susan, died. Perhaps less associated with the Queen were her Labradors and Cocker Spaniels, which were bred and kept at Sandringham and were also firm favourites. Her Majesty leaves behind 3 surviving dogs, 2 corgis and 1 dorgie.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back. You're watching London Live. The UK has just heard from our new monarch, who will be known as King Charles III, as he addressed the nation for the first time as king.
I speak to you today with feelings of sorrow. Throughout her life, Her Majesty the Queen, my beloved mother, was an inspiration, an example to me and to all my family. And we owe her the most heartfelt debt any family could owe to their mother, for her love, affection, guidance, understanding, and example. Queen Elizabeth was a life well lived, a promise with destiny kept, and she is mourned most deeply in her passing. That promise of lifelong service I renew to you all today. Alongside the personal grief that all my family are feeling, we also share with so many of you in the United Kingdom, in all the countries where the Queen was head of state, in the Commonwealth and across the world, a deep sense of gratitude for the more than 70 years in which my mother, as Queen, served the people of so many nations. In 1947, on her 21st birthday, she pledged in a broadcast from Cape Town to the Commonwealth to devote her life, whether it be short or long, to the service of her peoples. That was more than a promise. It was a profound personal commitment which defined her whole life. She made sacrifices for duty. Her dedication and devotion as sovereign never wavered through times of change and progress, through times of joy and celebration, and through times of sadness and loss. In her life of service, we saw that abiding love of tradition, together with that fearless embrace of progress, which makes us great as nations. The affection, admiration, and respect she inspired became the hallmark of her reign. And as every member of my family can testify, she combined these qualities with warmth, humor, and an unerring ability always to see the best in people. I pay tribute to my mother's memory, and I honor her life of service. I know that her death brings great sadness to so many of you, and I share that sense of loss beyond measure with you all. When the Queen came to the throne, Britain and the world were still coping with the privations and aftermath of the Second World War, and still living by the conventions of earlier times. In the course of the last 70 years, we have seen our society become one of many cultures and many faiths. The institutions of the state have changed in turn. But through all changes and challenges, our nation and the wider family of realms, of whose talents, traditions, and achievements I am so inexpressibly proud, have prospered and flourished. Our values have remained and must remain constant. The role and the duties of monarchy also remain, as does the sovereign's particular relationship and responsibility towards the Church of England, the church in which my own faith is so deeply rooted. In that faith and the values it inspires, I have been brought up to cherish a sense of duty to others and to hold in the greatest respect the precious traditions, freedoms, and responsibilities of our unique history and our system of parliamentary government. As the Queen herself did with such unswerving devotion, I too now solemnly pledge myself, throughout the remaining time God grants me, to uphold the constitutional principles at the heart of our nation. And wherever you may live in the United Kingdom, or in the realms and territories across the world, and whatever may be your background or beliefs, I shall endeavor to serve you with loyalty, respect, and love, as I have throughout my life. My life will, of course, change as I take up my new responsibilities. It will no longer be possible for me to give so much of my time and energies to the charities and issues for which I care so deeply. But I know this important work will go on in the trusted hands of others. This is also a time of change for my family. I count on the loving help of my darling wife, Camilla. In recognition of her own loyal public service since our marriage 17 years ago, she becomes my Queen Consort. I know she will bring to the demands of her new role the steadfast devotion to duty on which I have come to rely so much. As my heir, William now assumes the Scottish titles which have meant so much to me. He succeeds me as Duke of Cornwall and takes on the responsibilities for the Duchy of Cornwall, which I have undertaken for more than 5 decades. Today, I am proud to create him Prince of Wales, Tywysog Cymru, the country whose title I've been so greatly privileged to bear during so much of my life and duty. With Catherine beside him, our new Prince and Princess of Wales will, I know, continue to inspire and lead our national conversations, helping to bring the marginal to the centre ground, where vital help can be given. I want also to express my love for Harry and Meghan as they continue to build their lives overseas. In a little over a week's time, we will come together as a nation, as a Commonwealth, and indeed a global community, to lay my beloved mother to rest. In our sorrow, let us remember and draw strength from the light of her example. On behalf of all my family, I can only offer the most sincere and heartfelt thanks for your condolences and support. They mean more to me than I can ever possibly express. And to my darling Mama, as you begin your last great journey to join my dear late Papa, I want simply to say this: thank you. Thank you for your love and devotion to our family and to the family of nations you have served so diligently all these years. May flights of angels sing thee to thy rest.
Our new King Charles III with a very emotional address about his mother, who of course meant so much to the royal family, but also to the general public here in the UK and beyond. Well, on Saturday morning, an Ascension Council, which is the formal proclamation of Charles as king, will take place at St James's Palace here in London. It's time now for a final break, but when we come back, we'll hear from the royal photographer Jane Barlow, who took the last public pictures of Her Majesty the Queen.
From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live. From breaking news to headline events, the latest trends and places to be.
You can now keep up to date on daily life in London across London Live's social platforms.
Start the day with an update on the travel and weather, and know what's on around the city and what's being seen by others.
With stories from London Live's team of reporters and your videos of the news moments that matter.
Minute by minute. That's London Live News on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram and more.
Find us at London Live.
Welcome back to our final part of this special hour honouring Queen Elizabeth II. Well, earlier I spoke to Sarah Richardson, a royal expert and historian, with her take on the life of the Queen and what happens now.
I think because she's reigned a long time, she's been part of the culture, part of everyone's lives for 7 decades. Well, more than that when she was a princess, of course. And so obviously a change at the top, a change of monarch is going to make an impact. But also, I think she's reigned over a very transformational period. She came to the throne in the aftermath of the Second World War, in a period of austerity, and she's died at a time where we're in a technological age. There's a lot of changes in terms of economic changes, opportunities for women, and so on. So I think all of those things mean that it's a momentous impact.
Absolutely. Well, let's just take a little look back at her tenure as head of state then. What were some of the more significant moments in her reign?
Television has made it possible for many of you to see me in your homes on Christmas Day. My own family often gather round to watch television, as they are at this moment. And that is how I imagine you now.
I think for the institution of the monarchy, it's things like the fact that she did public broadcasts, first on the radio and then on television, and those brought the monarchy into everyone's sitting rooms, and so made that connection more than anything. Obviously, in a less positive way, things like the death of Diana made people look again at the institution of the monarchy and wonder whether it was outmoded. If you look over her reign for it's the wider things that have happened, then it is things like space travel, introduction of technology, transport changes. People can fly all over the world now. It certainly wasn't open to very many people in the 1950s and so on.
Absolutely. Well, today and yesterday we've seen thousands of people outside Buckingham Palace. And it seems more than any other monarch, she's kind of got this personal relationship with the public. Do you think that's fair to say?
I think so. I think, as I've said, there is a connection. The monarchy is visible, even if you don't live in London or you don't meet her on a royal visit. She's visible because she broadcasts to the nation at really crucial moments. So most recently, for example, in the pandemic, I think that her intervention was possibly more important than that of any government minister, and certainly watched by more people. So I think that connection with her as a person as well as a monarch is one of the reasons why we're seeing so much sort of a lot of the public were involved in celebrations for the Jubilee, for example, in a way to celebrate her reign, and now I think they're there to mourn her.
Well, a lot of people will be wondering what happens now. In what ways does the Queen's death impact daily life here in the UK?
So I think there's a key political and constitutional role for the monarchy. We've seen that happen in the last week when it was the Queen who had to invite Liz Truss to become Prime Minister. Politicians are elected, but they don't have the right to form a government. It's the Queen or the monarch that invites them to do that. So even though the constitutional role has changed over the years and become much more of a symbolic one rather than wielding actual power, it's still the case that, I say you can't just form a government, you can't just become Prime Minister, you have to be invited. We've also seen, I think, in relationships overseas, so the Commonwealth is very, very important. The monarch is head of state of a number of countries in the Commonwealth. And one wonders whether this might be a moment for a reconsideration of that relationship.
Absolutely. And, we have also seen on a smaller scale a lot of events here in the capital and beyond being cancelled or postponed. We're not going to have the last night of the proms, for example. Is that something that has to happen, or is that an individual choice of a mark of respect?
So there are some things that have to happen. So, for example, on the day of the funeral, the banks would be closed. That doesn't mean to say that everything needs to be closed, but it's highly likely that most shops and things, most outlets and entertainment venues, all of those sorts of things will be closed. So it's not formally part of the protocol, but there is a sort of sense that this is a period of mourning, and therefore sporting events, those sorts of things, entertainment, things like concerts, are probably not as appropriate. So I think there's a sort of balance between what's formal protocol and is dictated and you have to do, and then things that people want to do.
Well, that was Sarah Richardson there. Well, the Queen's tireless devotion to her duty as monarch was unmatched across her 70-year reign. Let's just take a look at this from an interview in 2017 with the Queen's late cousin, Lady Anson.
I mean, she just is remarkable. There's no other word for it. It's incredulous what she packs into a day. And sometimes at night I think to myself, why am I still doing this ridiculous thing? You know, coming back to bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and all of that, and working a full day. So I pick up my Daily Telegraph and I read the court circular. I mean, she knows I do this. And I read what she's done in a day. And I feel pretty pathetic. I mean, it is amazing. Because if you think about it, it's not like doing the same thing for very long hours. It's like doing 10 completely different things. So she might be in a motor tyre factory, followed by a old people's home, followed by a military something. And it's like having 12 different jobs in a day.
Well, a very fitting example of the Queen's dedication to her service is the fact Her Majesty welcomed the new Prime Minister to Balmoral to ask Liz Truss to form a government just 2 days before she died. Well, royal photographer Jane Barlow took the last public pictures of the Queen.
Just prior to the new Prime Minister arriving in the room, I just had a few moments with Her Majesty, and that's when I got that picture. She did just comment on the weather. She just commented on how dark it seemed outside because the weather had closed in. And she seemed in very good spirits. Obviously, she was very frail, but she was very smiley and, got lots of smiles from her.
That was royal photographer Jane Barlow there. Well, our new head of state, King Charles III, addressed the nation for the first time as monarch today. Let's just take a look at his life up until this moment. Well, that's it for this hour, but we will continue our coverage of the death of Queen Elizabeth II tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. and throughout the next week. Do join us then. For now, have a good evening.